The massive warship of the Zarathi Empire drifted through the darkness of space like a predator hunting its prey. Commander Vextor stood on the bridge, his four arms crossed behind his reptilian back as he watched the blue planet below. Earth, the newest discovery in their endless conquest of the galaxy. Such a primitive world, his second-in-command, Krell Mar, hissed through sharp teeth. Their technology is centuries behind ours. This will be easier than crushing insects. Vextor's scaled face twisted into what his species considered a smile. Begin the harvest. Take samples of their population for study. We need to understand these humans before we enslave them properly. The raid shuttles launched from the warship's belly like metal wasps leaving their nest. They descended through Earth's atmosphere, cloaked from primitive human detection systems. The target was a small farming community in rural Montana, chosen specifically because it was isolated and unlikely to be noticed immediately. 8-year-old Tommy Marshall was playing in the backyard when the sky suddenly went dark. He looked up expecting to see storm clouds, but instead saw a massive metal ship hovering above his family's ranch. Before he could scream, a beam of blue light engulfed him and everything went black. Sarah Marshall burst out of the kitchen door just in time to see her son floating upward in the strange light. "Tommy!" she screamed, running forward with her arms outstretched, but the beam was already pulling him into the ship's open bay. "No! Bring him back!" The shuttle rose higher, ignoring the desperate mother below. More beams swept across the area, collecting cattle, chickens, and even the family dog. Then, as quickly as they had come, the alien ships vanished into the sky. Sarah fell to her knees in the dirt, sobbing. With shaking hands, she pulled out her phone and dialed the only number that mattered. It rang once before a deep voice answered. "Jake, they took him. They took our boy." 3,000 miles away, Staff Sergeant Jake Marshall froze. The specialized sniper was in the middle of a training exercise at a classified military facility when his wife's words hit him like a physical blow. "What do you mean, took him? Sarah, what happened?" Through tears and gasps, she told him about the ships, the lights, the impossible sight of their son being pulled into the sky. Any other person might have thought she'd lost her mind, but Jake knew better. He'd seen the classified reports, heard the whispers in special operations circles about things the public wasn't ready to know. "I'm coming home," he said, his voice deadly calm. "Call Sheriff Davidson. Tell him everything. I'll be there in 6 hours." "6 hours? Jake, you're in Virginia." "6 hours, Sarah. I promise." Jake ended the call and turned to his commanding officer, who had been watching with growing concern. "Sir, I need immediate leave. Family emergency." Colonel Hammond had known Jake for 15 years. He'd never seen that particular look in the sniper's eyes before, a cold fury that promised violence. "What's happened, Sergeant?" "Someone took my son." Meanwhile, aboard the Zarathi warship, Tommy Marshall woke up in a cage made of energy. His head hurt, and he felt sick to his stomach. Around him, other humans were trapped in similar glowing prisons. A teenage girl, an elderly man, a young couple holding each other. "Mom?" Tommy called out, his voice small and frightened. "Dad?" A shadow fell across his cage. Tommy looked up to see a creature from his nightmares, tall, covered in scales, with 4 arms and eyes that glowed yellow in the dim light. The alien studied him like a scientist examining a specimen. "Young human," Vextor said through a translation device, "you will make an excellent test subject. Your species' offspring are particularly interesting to study." "I want my mom," Tommy said, trying to be brave despite the tears rolling down his cheeks. "My dad's going to come get me. He's a soldier. He'll make you sorry." The alien made a sound that might have been laughter. "Your primitive warriors cannot reach us here. Little one, your planet doesn't even have proper space travel. You will never see your family again." but Tommy Marshall had grown up hearing his father's stories, watching him practice at the range, learning that martial men never gave up. "You don't know my dad," he said quietly. "He always keeps his promises, and he promised he'd always protect me." Vextor dismissed the child's words and moved on to examine the other specimens. He didn't notice the small boy pulling something from his pocket, a gift from his father, a small GPS tracker disguised as a toy soldier. Jake had given it to him last Christmas, making him promise to always keep it with him. "Just in case you ever get lost," his dad had said with a wink. Tommy pressed the hidden button 3 times, just like his father had taught him. Somewhere on Earth, a signal started broadcasting. Back in Montana, Jake Marshall arrived at his ranch in exactly 6 hours, just as promised. He'd called in every favor, pulled every string, and broken probably a dozen traffic laws. Sarah ran into his arms, and he held her tight for just a moment before pulling back to look into her eyes. "Tell me everything. Every detail." As Sarah recounted the attack, Jake's mind was already working. He'd brought more than just himself from Virginia. In his truck were cases of equipment that technically didn't exist, experimental weapons, classified tracking systems, and gear that wouldn't be standard military issue for another decade. His phone buzzed. Jake looked at the screen and felt his heart skip. Tommy's tracker was active. The signal was weak, but it was there. His son was alive. "What is it?" Sarah asked, seeing the change in his expression. "Tommy activated his emergency beacon." Jake showed her the phone. "He's approximately 200 miles straight up and moving fast. How is that possible? How can you track him in space?" Jake was already moving, pulling cases from his truck. "Remember when I said my unit was working on next-generation equipment? Some of it wasn't exactly designed for use on Earth." Inside the house, Jake began assembling his gear. Sarah watched in amazement as her husband, whom she'd known as an exceptional but conventional soldier, started putting together equipment that looked like something from a science fiction movie. "Jake, what is all this?" He looked up from the rifle he was assembling, a weapon that seemed to shimmer with its own energy field. "After the Phoenix incident, you remember that meteor in Arizona last year? Certain units were equipped to deal with non-terrestrial threats. We've been preparing for this possibility." "You knew aliens were real?" "I couldn't tell you, I'm sorry." He attached a scope that projected holographic displays. "But yes, we knew, and we've been developing countermeasures." Sarah's fear transformed into something else. Hope. "You're going after him. I'm going to get our son back." Jake's voice was steel. "And I'm going to make them regret ever coming to this planet." He strapped on body armor that looked more advanced than anything Sarah had seen in movies. Weapons went into holsters and attachment points. Finally, he picked up a communication device. "Control, this is Ranger 77, authorization code Typhoon Alpha 9. I need immediate extract to Site 17. Prep the Javelin for launch." A voice crackled back. "Sergeant Marshall, we're aware of the situation. Transport en route. ETA 15 minutes. Sarah grabbed his arm. "Jake, you're scaring me. What's the Javelin?" "Our insurance policy." He cupped her face gently. "I'm bringing him home, Sarah. I promise." The sound of rotors filled the air as a black helicopter appeared over the horizon, moving faster than any normal aircraft. Jake kissed his wife one more time, then headed for the door. "Jake," Sarah called after him, "what are you going to do when you find them?" He paused in the doorway, and Sarah saw something in her husband she'd never seen before, the apex predator that had made him one of the most feared snipers in special operations. "I'm going to remind them why humans are the monsters in all the smart species' nightmares." Aboard the Zarathi warship, alarms suddenly began blaring. Krelmar rushed to Vextor's command station. "Commander, we're detecting an energy signature from the planet. It's impossible." "What kind of energy signature?" "A launch. But the trajectory, Commander, it's heading directly for us. Impact in 17 minutes. Vextor laughed. These primitives think their nuclear weapons can reach us? Activate point defense systems. Destroy whatever pathetic missile they've sent. But as the defensive weapons fired, they hit nothing but empty space. The object approaching them was too small, too fast, and using technology the Zarathi systems couldn't properly track. Commander, Krelmar's voice held the first note of fear. It's not a missile, it's a ship. A one-man craft moving at speeds that should tear it apart. Impossible. The humans don't have... Sir, it's transmitting something. Put it through. A human voice filled the bridge, cold and precise as a surgical blade. Zarathi vessel, this is Staff Sergeant Jake Marshall, United States Army Extraterrestrial Response Division. You have my son. You have one chance to return him unharmed. Refuse, and I will show you why we humans call ourselves persistence hunters. Vextor snarled. Destroy that ship! But Jake Marshall hadn't come this far to be stopped by alien point defense systems. The Javelin, humanity's first successful reverse-engineered alien fighter, danced through the incoming fire like a leaf on the wind. Jake's sniper instincts, honed over 20 years, translated perfectly to space combat. Where others saw chaos, he saw patterns. Where others saw impossible shots, he saw opportunities. The Zarathi warship's weapons blazed, filling space with deadly energy. Jake weaved between the beams, his craft's experimental shields deflecting glancing blows. He was close now, close enough to see the detail on the alien vessel's hull. Final warning, Jake broadcast. Return my son, or face the consequences. Vextor's response was to launch fighters, sleek craft that swarmed toward the lone human ship. Jake's hands moved over the controls with practiced ease. The javelin spun, twisted, and suddenly the lead alien fighter exploded. Then another and another. How? Krelmar gasped. He's hitting our fighters with projectile weapons from impossible angles. What the aliens didn't understand was that Jake Marshall had spent 2 decades making impossible shots. Wind, gravity, the Coriolis effect. He'd learned to calculate for them all. In the vacuum of space with computer-assisted targeting, he was even deadlier. 7 fighters became 4. 4 became 1. The last fighter tried to flee, but Jake's shot caught it perfectly in the engine assembly. It spiraled into the warship's hull and detonated. Inside the prison hold, Tommy heard the explosions and felt the ship shake. The other human prisoners looked around fearfully, but Tommy smiled for the first time since his capture. I told you, he said to no one in particular. I told you my dad would come. The lights flickered. In the confusion, Tommy remembered something else his father had taught him, how to look for weaknesses, how to find opportunity in chaos. The energy field of his cage wavered for just a moment during a particularly violent shake. Tommy threw himself at the barrier right as it flickered again. He tumbled through, free. Alarms wailed throughout the ship. Tommy ran, his small size allowing him to duck into maintenance passages that the tall aliens couldn't easily follow. He had no idea where he was going, but his dad always said that moving was better than waiting to be caught. On the bridge, Vextor watched in disbelief as the human fighter performed another impossible maneuver, avoiding 3 converging beam weapons while simultaneously destroying a shield generator. "How is one primitive human doing this?" he roared. Krelmar was frantically checking readings. Commander, internal security reports the young human specimen has escaped, and the adult human ship, it's not primitive at all. It's using a hybrid of technologies, some of which match our own systems. The realization hit Vextor like a physical blow. The humans had been preparing. They'd been studying, learning, adapting, and now one of their warriors had come for blood. "All weapons concentrate fire," Vextor commanded. "Destroy him!" But Jake Marshall hadn't come alone. As the Zarathi focused on him, they failed to notice the other signals approaching from Earth, an entire squadron of javelins, humanity's secret response to the alien threat. Ranger 77 to all units, Jake broadcast. Weapons free. Show them what happens when they take our children. Space lit up with violence as Earth's hidden defenders engaged the Zarathi warship. But Jake had his own mission. While his squad mates drew fire, he accelerated toward the warship's hull, targeting what his scans showed was the detention area. Inside the ship, Tommy could hear his father's voice over stolen communicator. "Tommy, if you can hear this, find cover. Dad's about to make some noise." The boy grinned and ducked into a storage room just as the hull beside him exploded inward. Through the smoke and debris stepped a figure in advanced combat armor, rifle raised and ready. Even through the helmet, Tommy recognized him. "Dad!" Jake's helmet turned toward him, and Tommy could hear the smile in his voice. "Hey, buddy. Sorry I'm late. You ready to go home?" "The others," Tommy said quickly. "There are other people trapped here." "Already on it." Jake touched his helmet. "Ranger team, I have my package. Moving to extract other civilians. Grid reference follows." He scooped Tommy up with one arm while keeping his weapon ready with the others. As they moved through the corridors, alien security forces tried to stop them. They learned what human special forces already knew. Jake Marshall didn't miss. Each shot was precise, calculated, devastating. The aliens' personal shields, designed for energy weapons, did nothing against the specialized kinetic rounds Jake's rifle fired. He moved through the ship like death incarnate, protecting his son while systematically eliminating any threat. They reached the detention area where other humans were still trapped. Jake set Tommy down in cover and approached the control panel. "Watch the door, buddy, just like we practiced at home." While Tommy kept watch, Jake attached a device to the alien computer. Within seconds, the cages deactivated. The captured humans stumbled out, confused and terrified. "Everyone stay calm," Jake announced. "I'm Sergeant Marshall, United States Army. We're getting you home. Follow me and do exactly as I say." Leading the group of civilians, Jake carved a path back toward his entry point. The Zarathi tried to stop them, but Jake Marshall was in his element now, protecting innocents, eliminating threats, doing what he did best. They reached the breach where Jake's javelin was magnetically sealed to the hull. But the small fighter couldn't carry everyone. Jake activated his communicator. "Control, this is Ranger 77. I need immediate extract for 12 civilians. My position. -77. Unable to approach due to heavy fire." Jake looked at the frightened people, at his son's trusting face. He made a decision. "Then we do this the hard way. Everyone into the Javelin's emergency pod. It'll be cramped, but you'll survive." "What about you?" the elderly man asked. Jake chambered a round in his rifle. "I'm going to buy you time and have a conversation with their commander about taking things that don't belong to him." "Dad, no!" Tommy grabbed his father's arm. "You promised you'd come home." Jake knelt down to his son's level. "And I will. But first, I need to make sure this never happens again. Remember what I taught you?" Tommy's eyes filled with tears, but he nodded. "Protect others. Even when it's hard. That's my boy." Jake hugged him tight, then helped load everyone into the emergency pod. He programmed it to auto-navigate back to the extraction point, then sealed it. As the pod launched, Jake turned back toward the ship's interior. He had one more mission to complete. On the bridge, Vextor watched his mighty warship being torn apart by the human fighters. Half his weapons were offline, shields were failing, and that demon of a human was still somewhere on his ship. "Commander," Krelmar reported, "the human has released the captives. They've escaped in a pod." "Then he's trapped here," Vextor snarled. "Find him! Kill him!" "Sir, shouldn't we retreat? The human fighters, we are the Zarathi Empire. We do not run from primitives." It was pride that killed them in the end. As Vextor raged and refused to retreat, Jake Marshall moved through the ship like a ghost. He planted charges at critical systems, life support, power generation, weapons control. But he saved the bridge for last. The massive doors to the command center exploded inward. Through the smoke walked a single human, rifle raised. The bridge crew fired at him, but Jake's armor absorbed the energy blasts. His return fire was lethal. In seconds, only Vextor and Krelmar remained, the commander defiant even in defeat. "You think you've won, human?" Vextor hissed. "You've only delayed the inevitable. The Empire will send a fleet. Your world will burn." Jake removed his helmet, wanting the alien to see his face. "Maybe, but you won't be around to see it." He raised his rifle. "You took my son." "It was just business," Krelmar protested. "We didn't know humans were..." "Were what?" Jake's voice was ice. "Dangerous? Protective of our young? Let me educate you about humanity, since you clearly didn't do your homework." He moved closer, his rifle never wavering. "We're persistence hunters. We once chased prey until it died of exhaustion. We've survived ice ages, plagues, and wars that would break other species. We've turned killing into an art form and then felt bad about it, which somehow made us even more dangerous." The lights flickered as Jake's charges began detonating throughout the ship. "But worst of all for you, we love our children more than we fear death. You took my son. Did you really think I wouldn't come for him?" Vextor tried to reach for a weapon. Jake's shot was perfect, as always. The commander collapsed, his yellow eyes dimming. Krelmar raised his forearms in surrender. "Please! Mercy!" Jake considered him for a moment. "You want mercy? Here it is. You get to live. You get to go back to your empire and tell them what happened here. Tell them that Earth is protected. Tell them that we're not prey, we're predators. And if they come for our children again, we won't stop at one ship." He shot out the navigation console, then the communication array. "Your distress beacon still works. Someone will find you eventually. Use that time to think about what you've learned today." Jake turned and walked off the bridge, leaving the terrified alien alone among the bodies of his crew. He made it to an escape pod just as the warship's main reactor went critical. The pod ejected into space moments before the Zarathi vessel became a brief, brilliant star. His squadron recovered him minutes later. By the time Jake landed back on Earth, Tommy and the other captives were already being treated at a secure facility. Sarah was there, tears streaming down her face as she held their son. Tommy broke free and ran to his father as Jake entered the room. "Dad, you came back!" Jake swept his son up into his arms, holding him tight. "I promised, didn't I? Marshals always keep their promises." Over Tommy's shoulder, Jake saw Colonel Hammond approaching. The older officer's expression was grim. "Sergeant, we need to debrief. The readings we got from that ship, this was just a scout vessel. There's an entire empire out there." Jake set Tommy down, but kept a hand on his shoulder. "Then we'd better get ready for them, sir. Because if they come back, I won't be the only parent looking for payback." Hammond nodded slowly. "The President's authorized full disclosure to our allies. We're going to need everyone for what's coming." "What's coming, Dad?" Tommy asked, looking up at his father. Jake knelt beside his son. "Remember how I taught you that sometimes we have to protect others? Well, now it's humanity's turn to protect Earth, and we're very good at protecting what's ours." 3 months later, in a distant arm of the galaxy, Krelmar stood before the Zarathi High Council. His testimony had shaken the Empire to its core. "One human?" the first counselor demanded. "One human destroyed a warship?" "Not just any human," Krelmar corrected, his voice still carrying the fear from that day. "A parent, a father protecting his offspring. And there are billions more like him. Surely they cannot all be so dangerous." Krelmar activated a hologram showing the debris field that had once been Vextor's warship. "Honored counselors, I researched human history after my rescue. They once had wars where millions died. They've created weapons that can destroy entire cities. They've survived disasters that would end other species. But most terrifying of all, he paused, remembering Jake Marshall's cold eyes. They teach their young to be like them. That child we took? He escaped his cell on his own. He was 8 of their years old, and he was already thinking like a warrior. The council murmured among themselves. Finally, the first counselor spoke. What do you recommend? Mark their system as forbidden. Classify Earth as a Class X threat. Do not engage. Do not approach. Do not provoke. Krelmar's scales had never fully regained their color since that day. The humans have a saying, let sleeping dogs lie. I suggest we follow their wisdom. The council voted unanimously. Earth was marked with the highest danger classification in the Empire's history. A single note was added to the file. Species possesses irrational protective instincts toward offspring. Engagement not recommended. Survival unlikely. Back on Earth, Jake Marshall continued his work, now as part of humanity's expanded defense force. Every night he tucked Tommy into bed, the boy safe and sound in his own room. And every night, Tommy asked the same question. Dad, will the aliens come back? Jake would smile and ruffle his son's hair. Maybe, buddy. But if they do, we'll be ready. Humans stick together, remember? And nobody messes with our kids. As Tommy drifted off to sleep, Jake would stand by the window, looking up at the stars. Somewhere out there, word was spreading through the galaxy. Earth was protected. Humanity was dangerous. And Jake Marshall would make sure it stayed that way, because he was a father, and he'd made a promise. Marshalls always keep their promises. 5 years had passed since the Zarathi incident. The world had changed dramatically. The revelation of hostile alien life had united humanity in a way nothing else could have. The secret was out. We were not alone, and we were not safe. Jake Marshall stood in the observation deck of Orbital Defense Platform 7, watching Earth spin slowly below. His son Tommy, now 13, stood beside him, wearing the gray uniform of a cadet in the Earth Defense Initiative's youth program. Dad, why are we here? Tommy asked, though he suspected he knew the answer. Remember what I told you about always being ready? Jake replied. Well, intelligence picked up something. Deep space scanners detected movement near Neptune. Could be nothing. Could be scouts. Tommy's hand unconsciously moved to the upgraded tracker on his belt, now standard issue for all human children. The Zarathi? No. Someone new. Jake turned from the window. Someone who apparently didn't get the memo about leaving Earth alone. An alarm began blaring through the station. Colonel Hammond's voice echoed over the speakers. All personnel to battle stations, we have confirmed contact. Multiple bogies entering the solar system. This is not a drill. Jake grabbed his gear bag. Tommy, get to the secure bunker with the other cadets. But Dad, no arguments. You know the protocol. Jake's voice softened. I'll come find you when it's over. Promise. As Tommy reluctantly headed to the bunker, Jake made his way to the armory. Other members of the Extraterrestrial Response Division were already there, suiting up. These weren't just soldiers. They were parents, each one hand-picked for their protective instincts and combat skills. What do we know? Jake asked Captain Maria Rodriguez, a mother of 3 and former Navy SEAL. 7 ships, configuration unknown. They're not trying to hide. Coming straight down the solar plane like they own the place. She chambered a round in her weapon. Guess they need to learn the same lesson as the Zarathi. The new aliens called themselves the Vorthan Collective. Unlike the reptilian Zarathi, they were silicon-based life forms, looking like living crystal formations. Their ships were beautiful in a terrifying way, geometric shapes that defied conventional design, surfaces that reflected light in impossible ways. They announced their presence with a system-wide broadcast. The translation was perfect, which meant they'd been studying humanity. People of Earth, we are the Vorthon Collective. We have heard of your victory over the Zarathi scout vessel. Impressive for primitives, but ultimately meaningless. We are not raiders seeking specimens. We are conquerors. Your planet's resources will serve the collective. Resistance is illogical. In the United Nations Emergency Command Center, world leaders watched the message with grim faces. The President of the United States turned to General Patterson, the head of Earth's combined military forces. Options? We've got 72 Javelin fighters operational, 15 orbital defense platforms, and the 3 Hammer-class destroyers we've built using reverse-engineered tech. The general pulled up a tactical display. But their ships are more advanced than anything the Zarathi had. This won't be easy. The French Prime Minister leaned forward. What about the Prometheus Protocol? Everyone in the room knew what that meant. In the 5 years since the Zarathi attack, humanity had developed weapons that made nuclear bombs look like firecrackers. Weapons based on alien technology, improved by human innovation and spite. If we use those weapons this close to Earth... The Japanese ambassador didn't finish the sentence. They all knew the risks. We might not have a choice, the president said quietly. But first, let's see if our welcoming committee can discourage them. The first clash happened near Jupiter. 30 Javelin fighters, led by Jake Marshall's squadron, intercepted the Vorthon vanguard. It was immediately clear that these aliens had learned from the Zarathi's mistakes. Their ships moved in perfect coordination, crystalline hulls somehow absorbing and redirecting energy weapons. "Switch to kinetic rounds," Jake ordered. "Pattern Delta 7. The human fighters scattered, then regrouped in a formation designed to maximize crossfire. Traditional projectiles seemed more effective against the crystal ships, cracking their perfect surfaces. But for every hit the humans scored, the Vorthans adapted. "Ranger 7-7, they're learning our patterns," Maria's voice crackled over the comm. "It's like fighting a computer that gets smarter every second." Jake watched as one of his pilots made a perfect attack run, only for the Vorthan ship to suddenly shift its crystalline structure, creating an opening that let the shots pass harmlessly through. These weren't just conquerors. They were evolutionary machines. "All units, break pattern! Go random! Trust your instincts!" Jake dove his fighter toward the largest Vorthon vessel. If they could think like computers, maybe the solution was to stop thinking and start feeling. It worked, at least partially. Human unpredictability confused the Vorthan algorithms. Where the aliens expected patterns, humans gave them chaos. Where they calculated optimal responses, humans did the unexpected, the illogical, the insane. But the Vorthans had one advantage humanity couldn't overcome with clever tactics: sheer firepower. Beams of concentrated energy lashed out, and Javelin fighters began to die. Jake watched his tactical display as friendly markers blinked out one by one. "Johnson's gone. Smith, too. Damn it." Maria's fighter took a glancing blow, sending her spinning. "I'm hit! Losing control!" Jake didn't think. He acted. His fighter dove toward Maria's tumbling craft, using his own shields to absorb the follow-up shots meant to finish her. The impact nearly overloaded his systems, but Maria was able to regain control. "Thanks, Marshall. Parents stick together. Now let's..." His sentence was cut off, as space itself seemed to ripple. 3 more Vorthan ships emerged from some kind of faster-than-light jump directly in the middle of the human formation. "Ambush! All units scatter!" But there was nowhere to run. The human fighters were surrounded, outgunned, and rapidly being picked apart. Jake made a decision that would have seemed insane to anyone but a human parent protecting their world. "All units, this is Ranger 7-7. Execute Prometheus Protocol authorization. Playground Omega-1. There was a moment of silence on the comms. Then, one by one, confirmations came in. Every pilot knew what this meant. They'd all left letters for their families, just in case. Hidden in the asteroid belt, humanity's last resort weapons came online. The Prometheus missiles, each one containing a warhead that combined human nuclear technology with exotic matter stolen from the Zarathi wreck. Weapons that could crack a moon if used incorrectly. "Maria, take the survivors and get clear," Jake ordered. "Minimum safe distance." "Like hell. We're in this together, Marshal." "That's an order, Captain. Someone needs to report back. Tell them—" He paused, thinking of Tommy, safe in the bunker. "Tell them we held the line." As the surviving human fighters retreated, Jake and 5 volunteers stayed behind. They painted targets for the Prometheus missiles, keeping the Vorthon ships focused on them instead of the incoming weapons. The Vorthons, for all their computational power, had made one crucial error. They'd studied human military tactics, but they hadn't understood human sacrifice. The concept of deliberately dying to protect others was so illogical to their collective consciousness that they literally couldn't process it fast enough. The first Prometheus missile hit the lead Vorthon ship. The explosion was visible from Earth, a new star born and dying in seconds. The crystalline vessel didn't just break, it ceased to exist on a molecular level. But the Vorthons learned fast, incredibly fast. The remaining ships began to shift, their structures flowing like liquid crystal to create some kind of defense grid. The second missile was deflected, sent spinning into Jupiter's atmosphere, where it detonated harmlessly. "They're adapting!" one of the volunteer pilots screamed. "They're learning how to stop them!" Jake's mind raced. If the Vorthons could adapt to their weapons, then they needed something that couldn't be adapted to. Something illogical, something human. "All Prometheus missiles, abort targeting sequence," he commanded. "Manual control override, my authorization." "Marshal, what are you doing?" General Patterson's voice cut through from Earth Command. "Those missiles need precise targeting." "Exactly what they're expecting, sir." Jake's hands flew over his controls, taking direct command of the remaining Prometheus missiles. "They're machines, General. They think in straight lines, optimal paths. Time to show them how a human thinks." What followed was the most insane display of piloting in human history. Jake flew his fighter directly at the Vorthon formation while simultaneously controlling 6 planet-killer missiles like they were remote-controlled toys. He sent them spinning, looping, doubling back on themselves in patterns that made no tactical sense. The Vorthon's collective intelligence tried to calculate his strategy. They couldn't. There was no strategy. It was pure, human, chaotic intuition. Jake wasn't thinking 3 moves ahead. He wasn't thinking at all. He was feeling the flow of battle, riding it like a wave. A Vorthon beam clipped his fighter's wing. Warning lights blazed across his cockpit. Jake laughed, actually laughed, as he sent 2 missiles corkscrewing around each other in a double helix pattern that no sane person would ever program. "You want to understand humans?" he broadcast to the alien fleet. "Here's your lesson. We don't make sense. We don't follow optimal paths. We do whatever it takes to protect what's ours. And right now, you're threatening our children." The missiles hit simultaneously from 6 different angles. The Vorthon defense grid, designed to counter logical attack patterns, shattered against pure human unpredictability. 3 more crystal ships vanished in blinding explosions. But Jake's fighter was dying. Systems failing, cockpit filling with smoke, he aimed his crippled craft at the nearest surviving Vorthon vessel. If he was going down, he was taking one more with him. That's when he heard it. A new voice on the comms, young but steady. "Dad, pull up! Cavalry's here!" Jake's heart stopped. "Tommy, what are you—" Space erupted with new contacts. Not Vorthon, human. Dozens of new Javelin fighters poured from concealed positions in Jupiter's moons, and leading them impossibly was a modified trainer craft with cadet markings. "Sorry." "Dad," Tommy's voice came through again. "But you taught me that marshals protect others, even when it's hard." The cadets, kids who should have been safe in their bunker, had stolen every trainer and museum fighter they could find. They'd jury-rigged weapons, overclocked engines, and come to save their parents. It was insane. It was illogical. It was perfectly human. The Vorthon's collective intelligence actually paused, trying to process this. Children. The humans had sent their offspring into battle. It went against every model of species behavior they'd calculated. That pause was fatal. The cadets might have been young, but they'd grown up in a world that knew about aliens. They'd trained since childhood, playing simulator games that were actually combat programs. And they fought with the fearlessness of youth combined with the fury of children protecting their parents. Tommy's trainer dove through the battlefield, its training lasers somehow modified to fire actual weaponry. "Light 'em up, Badgers," he called to his squadron, the nickname their cadet class had earned. The battle turned into chaos. Trained pilots and teenage cadets fighting side by side, communication a mix of military protocol and kids' slang. The Vorthons, faced with tactics that ranged from textbook to completely made up on the spot, began to fall back. "Impossible," the Vorthon command ship broadcast. "Your tactics make no sense. Your children fight alongside warriors. You sacrifice optimal positioning for family," Jake finished, his damaged fighter finally responding as Tommy's wing provided cover. "Something you'll never understand. We're not optimal. We're not logical. We're human. And we protect our own." The remaining Vorthon ships began to retreat, their perfect formation breaking apart. But humanity wasn't done teaching lessons. From Earth's surface, ground-based weapons opened fire, not advanced alien tech, but good old-fashioned human railguns, hurling chunks of metal at significant fractions of light speed. One Vorthon ship, its crystalline hull already cracked from the battle, took a direct hit from what was essentially a telephone pole made of tungsten, moving at Mach 20. It shattered like glass. The last two Vorthon vessels made it to minimum jump distance and vanished into whatever dimension they used for faster-than-light travel. The battle was over. Humanity had won. Again. But at a cost. Jake guided his failing fighter toward the nearest orbital platform, Tommy flying escort. Behind them, recovery ships were already moving to collect escape pods and damaged fighters. Not everyone would be coming home. "Dad," Tommy said quietly over a private channel, "I'm sorry. I know you told me to stay in the bunker, but you're a marshal," Jake finished, "and marshals protect people. I'm proud of you, son. Scared out of my mind, but proud." They landed side by side in the platform's hangar. As Jake climbed out of his battered fighter, Tommy was there to catch him when his injured leg gave out. Around them, other pilots were reuniting with their children, the cadets who'd saved the day through sheer illogical human audacity. General Patterson's voice echoed through the hangar. "All personnel, be advised. Long-range scanners show the Vorthon ships have fully withdrawn from the system. Earth is secure. I repeat, Earth is secure." A cheer went up, but Jake barely heard it. He was holding his son, this brave, foolish, wonderful child who'd risked everything to save him. Sarah was going to kill them both when she found out. "Mr. Marshall," a young cadet approached, one of Tommy's classmates. "Sir, Tommy told us what you said once, that humans are persistence hunters, that we protect our pack." Jake looked around at the assembled cadets, these children who'd thrown military doctrine out the window to save their parents. "That's right." "Well, sir," the girl continued, "we were thinking, the aliens keep coming one at a time, learning about us. Maybe it's time we went to them, showed them that Earth isn't just defended. It's dangerous to even think about attacking." Other adults might have dismissed it as childish bravado. But Jake Marshall had just watched these kids turn the tide of an interstellar battle. He nodded slowly. "You might be onto something, cadet." Later in the debriefing room, Jake stood before Earth's combined military leadership. His leg was bandaged, his uniform scorched, but his eyes were clear. "The Vorthons learned the same lesson as the Zarathi," he reported, "but they'll spread the word more efficiently. They're networked, connected, Every collective unit now knows that humans are unpredictable, that we'll sacrifice ourselves for our children, and that our children will do the same for us. That's good, the president said. Maybe they'll all leave us alone now. Jake shook his head. With respect, ma'am, that's not enough. The cadets had the right idea. We've been playing defense, waiting for the next attack. It's time we took control of the narrative. General Patterson leaned forward. What are you suggesting, Sergeant? I'm suggesting we stop waiting for aliens to discover us and decide we're easy prey. Jake activated a holographic display showing the locations of both attacks. We have their technology now. We have ships that can reach the stars. Maybe it's time we paid some visits. Not to conquer, but to make a statement. And what statement would that be? The British Prime Minister asked. Jake thought of Tommy, of all the children who'd fought today. That Earth is under the protection of humanity. And humanity doesn't just defend, we hunt those who threaten our young. The room fell silent as the implications sank in. Finally, the president spoke. Draw up a proposal, Sergeant. It's time the galaxy learned that humans aren't just another species to be catalogued and conquered. Outside the debriefing room, Tommy waited with the other cadets. When Jake emerged, they all stood at attention. These children who'd become warriors too soon. At ease, Badgers, Jake said, using their squadron name. You all did good today. Better than good. You did what trained pilots said was impossible. We learned from the best, Tommy said, looking at his father. Jake surveyed the young faces, human children who'd faced down an alien invasion and won through sheer determination and illogical bravery. The galaxy had no idea what it had awakened. Get some rest, he told them. Tomorrow we start preparing for the next phase. The aliens want to understand humanity. We're going to give them a lesson they'll never forget. As the cadets filed out, chattering excitedly despite their exhaustion, Jake put his arm around Tommy's shoulders. Together, they walked toward the observation deck, where Earth hung in the void, blue, beautiful, and now proven twice to be far from defenseless. Dad, Tommy asked, do you think they'll come back? The Vorthans or others? Jake considered the question. Maybe, probably. The galaxy's a big place, and there's always someone who thinks they're stronger than everyone else. And when they do? Jake smiled, the expression sharp as a blade. Then we remind them why humans became the dominant species on a planet full of predators. We're not just fighters, son. We're teachers, and class is always in session. In the depths of space, aboard the fleeing Vorthon command ship, the collective processed the battle data. The conclusions were disturbing. Humans didn't follow predictable patterns. They sacrificed optimal outcomes for emotional goals. Their offspring fought with the same ferocity as adults. They turned weaknesses into strengths through sheer stubborn refusal to accept defeat. The collective reached a consensus. Earth would be marked as a Class X threat, same as the Zarathi had designated. A warning would be broadcast to all known civilizations. Humanity was not to be underestimated. They were chaos given form, protection instinct made manifest. But even as the warning spread through the galactic networks, the collective's long-range sensors detected something troubling. Human ships, crude but functional, were already beginning to venture beyond their solar system. Not many. Not yet. But the trajectory was clear. The humans weren't content to simply defend their world anymore. They were coming to make sure the galaxy got the message in person, and leading them, according to intercepted communications, was someone the humans called the Marshal, a warrior whose very name had already become legend among those who'd survived humanity's wrath. A father who'd destroyed a warship to save his son. A teacher who'd shown the galaxy that humans were not prey. The hunt was about to begin, and this time humanity wouldn't be waiting for the next threat to arrive. They'd be delivering the warning themselves. 10 years had passed since the Vorthon attack. Earth's skyline had changed dramatically. Orbital elevators reached into space, defensive platforms ringed the planet like a steel necklace, and shipyards worked around the clock building humanity's first true interstellar fleet. Captain Tommy Marshall stood on the bridge of the ESS Retribution, one of 12 Predator-class warships built with a combination of human engineering and reverse-engineered alien technology. At 23, he was young for a captain, but nobody questioned his qualifications. Not after what the Badger Squadron had accomplished. "Jump coordinates confirmed, Captain," his navigation officer reported. "We'll exit hyperspace at the edge of the Korvax hegemony in 17 minutes. Tommy nodded. "All hands, this is the captain. Prepare for first contact protocols. Remember, we're not here to start a war. We're here to prevent one." In the ship's ready room, Jake Marshall, now Colonel Marshall, briefed his special operations team. At 55, he moved a bit slower than he used to, but his aim was still perfect. The team of 12 men and women listened intently as he outlined their mission. "The Korvax hegemony has been sending probe ships into our outer solar system for the past 6 months, Jake explained, highlighting positions on the holographic display. "They claim it's for scientific research, but intelligence suggests they're testing our defenses." Lieutenant Sarah Chen, one of his team members and a mother of 2, spoke up. "So, we're here to ask them nicely to stop?" Jake smiled. The kind of smile that had made alien commanders wake up in cold sweats. "We're here to deliver a message, diplomatically if possible. But if they need a more direct demonstration..." He patted the rifle beside him, a weapon that had become legendary in its own right. The ESS Retribution dropped out of hyperspace precisely where planned. Immediately, proximity alarms began blaring as Korvax patrol ships moved to intercept. The aliens were humanoid but stood nearly 8 feet tall, with 4 eyes and skin that shifted between purple and blue depending on their mood. "Korvax vessels, this is Captain Thomas Marshall of the Earthship Retribution," Tommy broadcast. "We come in peace, seeking diplomatic dialogue with your leadership." The response was swift and aggressive. "Human vessel, you have violated hegemony space. Power down your weapons and prepare to be boarded." Tommy glanced at his tactical officer, who shook her head slightly. 40 ships were converging on their position. The Korvax had apparently decided to capture Earth's first diplomatic mission. "Korvax, Commander," Tommy replied calmly, "I strongly advise against that course of action. We're here to talk. But if you force our hand, you'll learn why the Zarathi and Vorthens marked our species as a Class X threat." Laughter came through the communications system. "We've heard the stories, little human. 2 lucky victories against unprepared scouts. The hegemony has conquered 1,000 worlds. Your single ship stands no chance against our fleet." Tommy sighed. It seemed like every alien species needed the same lesson. He touched a button on his command chair. "Colonel Marshall, you have a green light. Try to keep casualties to a minimum." In the Special Operations Bay, Jake and his team were already in their drop pods. "You heard the captain," Jake said over the team comm. "We do this by the book, quick, efficient, and educational. Let's remind them why humanity wrote the book on warfare." The Korvax commander was still laughing when 12 pods launched from the Retribution, moving at speeds that should have torn them apart. But human engineers had learned to build things that defied conventional physics, partly from alien tech, but mostly from sheer stubbornness and a refusal to accept impossible. "What are those?" a Korvax officer asked. "Escape pods? The humans are abandoning ship already?" The commander's mood skin shifted to a pleased purple. "Pathetic. Target their main vessel and..." His words were cut off as one of the pods slammed into his flagship's hull. But instead of crumpling on impact, it punched through the armor like a bullet through paper. Emergency alarms wailed as atmosphere vented into space. Inside the Korvax ship, Jake Marshall and his team emerged from their pod like ancient warriors stepping out of a Trojan horse. The Korvax security forces responded quickly, but they'd made a critical error. They'd studied human military tactics from intercepted broadcasts and historical records. They hadn't studied human parents defending their world. Jake moved through the corridors with mechanical precision. Every shot found its mark. Every movement was calculated to minimize exposure while maximizing damage. His team followed, each member a parent who'd volunteered for this mission, each one carrying the fury of a species that had been threatened one too many times. "Security teams to Deck 7! The Korvax ship's internal communications blared. "Repel boarders!" But Jake's team wasn't there to occupy the ship. They had a specific target, the flagship's computer core. As they carved their way through the vessel, Jake couldn't help but notice how the Korvax fought. They were brave, disciplined, and completely unprepared for humans. "Colonel, we've got heavies incoming," Chen reported, gesturing to the squad of power-armored Korvax warriors approaching. Jake reached into his pack and pulled out something that looked deceptively simple, a metal sphere about the size of a baseball. "Everyone back. Let's show them human ingenuity." He activated the device and rolled it down the corridor like he was bowling. The Korvax warriors laughed at the primitive attack. Then the sphere exploded, not with fire or shrapnel, but with something far worse. Nanobots swarmed out, designed by humans who'd taken alien technology and asked, "How can we make this more terrifying?" The warriors' power armor began disintegrating, eaten away at the molecular level. They retreated in panic, their mood skin flashing through colors humans had never seen before. "Computer core, 30 meters, Jake announced. "Chen, Williams, set the charges. Everyone else, defensive positions." Meanwhile, on the bridge of the Retribution, Tommy was calmly directing the battle. The Korvax fleet had moved to surround his single ship, exactly as he'd anticipated. What they hadn't anticipated was that human ships were designed by a species that had grown up watching science fiction and asking, "Why don't spaceships do that?" "Activate the mirror field," Tommy ordered. The space around the Retribution suddenly filled with perfect holographic copies of the ship. Dozens of them, each one emitting the same energy signatures, the same sensor readings. The Korvax weapons fired, hitting illusion after illusion while the real ship danced between the beams. "Sir, the Korvax are trying to adapt their sensors," the tactical officer reported. Tommy grinned, an expression he'd inherited from his father. "Let them try. Randomize the projection patterns and prepare the swarm." The swarm was humanity's answer to being outnumbered. If you couldn't have more ships, have more weapons. The Retribution's hull opened in 100 places, releasing clouds of autonomous drones. Each one was no bigger than a basketball. But they moved with terrifying coordination, another gift from studying the Vorthon Collective and improving on it with human creativity. The drones attacked like angry wasps, targeting weapon systems and engine ports. The Korvax fleet's formation began to crumble as ships found themselves fighting enemies too small to effectively target, but too numerous to ignore. Back on the flagship, Jake's team had reached the computer core. The charges were set, but Jake had one more message to deliver. He activated the Korvax command frequency, knowing every ship in the fleet would hear him. "Korvax hegemony, this is Colonel Jake Marshall of Earth. You wanted to know if the stories about humanity were true. Let me clarify them for you." He paused, letting the gravity of the moment sink in. "We don't conquer worlds. We don't need to. We have one world, and we'll burn the galaxy to ash before we let anyone take it." The charges detonated, not explosives. Humans had moved beyond such crude tools. These were data bombs, designed to infiltrate and rewrite computer systems. Every screen on every Korvax ship suddenly displayed the same message in their own language. "Earth is protected. This is your only warning." Below the text was an image. The burning wreckage of Zarathi and Vorthan ships, a testament to what happened to those who threatened humanity's home. "Extraction in 30 seconds, Jake announced to his team. Everyone to the pods. They moved back through the crippled flagship, past Korvax soldiers who no longer tried to stop them. The aliens had seen what a dozen humans could do to their most powerful vessel. They were starting to understand. As Jake's team launched back toward the Retribution, the Korvax fleet was in chaos. Ships collided as their navigation systems glitched. Weapons fired randomly as targeting computers reset. And through it all, that single human ship sailed untouched, its swarm of drones ensuring that any vessel that tried to pursue would regret it. "Korvax Commander," Tommy broadcast again. "I hope we've cleared up any misunderstandings about human capabilities. Now, shall we discuss keeping your probe ships out of our system, or do you need further demonstration?" The response, when it came, was from a different voice, older, more measured. "This is Hegemon Vaxtor. Human Captain, I would speak with you." The view screen activated, showing an elderly Korvax whose mood skin had settled into a deep indigo of contemplation. "Your message has been received, but answer me this. If humanity is so powerful, why not conquer? Why warn instead of destroy?" Tommy stood from his command chair, making sure the alien could see him clearly. Young by galactic standards, but with eyes that had seen war. "Because we're not monsters, Hegemon. We're parents. We protect our children, our world. Attack us, and we'll end you. Leave us in peace, and we'll do the same. And if others come, if species more powerful than the hegemony decide Earth is a threat to be eliminated?" It was Jake who answered, his image appearing alongside his son's as he returned to the bridge. "Then they'll learn what our ancestors knew. Humans are persistence hunters. We don't stop, we don't quit, and we get stronger with every enemy we face." The Hegemon was quiet for a long moment. Around him, his bridge crew worked frantically to restore their systems. Finally, he spoke. "The probe ships will be recalled, Earth's borders will be respected, and Hegemon space will be closed to any who would hunt your kind." "That's all we ask," Tommy replied. "Spread the word, Hegemon. Earth wants peace. But we're very, very good at war." The communication ended. Tommy ordered the drones recalled and the ship prepared for departure. As the Retribution turned toward home, the Korvax fleet parted before them, 40 warships making way for one human vessel. "Think they'll keep their word?" Jake asked his son as they watched the alien fleet shrink in the distance. "For a while," Tommy replied. "Until someone else decides we're an easy target. That's why we can't stop here." Jake raised an eyebrow. "What do you mean?" Tommy activated a star chart showing dozens of marked systems. "The president approved my proposal this morning. 12 ships, 12 different major powers. We're going to visit them all. Not to threaten, but to introduce ourselves properly. To show them that humanity wants to be part of the galactic community, on our terms. And if they don't agree to those terms?" Tommy's expression was pure martial determination. "Then we educate them, just like you educated the Zarathi, just like we educated the Vorthans and now the Korvax." He paused. "I've been studying the old records, Dad. Do you know what made ancient humans so successful? It wasn't our strength or speed. It was our ability to communicate, to form communities, to protect each other." Jake nodded slowly. "The pack mentality." "Exactly. So that's what we're going to do. Form a pack. Earth and any species wise enough to see the benefit of having humanity as allies rather than enemies." Over the next year, human ships appeared throughout the galaxy. Sometimes they came in peace, establishing trade and defensive agreements. Sometimes they came in war, when species refused to respect Earth's sovereignty. But always, they carried the same message. Humanity was here to stay. The galaxy learned to recognize human ships, not by their design, which was constantly evolving, but by their behavior. They were the ships that would answer any distress call, the ones that would stand between slavers and their prey. The vessels that would appear from nowhere if someone threatened a world that couldn't defend itself. "Why do you do this?" an ambassador from the Altarian Confederation asked during one diplomatic meeting. "Why risk your ships and people for species you've never met?" The human diplomat, a grandmother named Chen who'd once fought in the Badger Squadron, smiled. "Because that's what humans do. We protect, we defend. We stand up for those who can't stand for themselves. It's not logical. It's not optimal. But it's right." "But what do you gain from it?" "Friends," Chen replied simply. "Allies, a galaxy where our children can explore the stars without fear. Isn't that worth fighting for?" The Altarians, a species that valued logic above all else, took 3 days to process this. When they emerged from their deliberations, they had a simple response. "We would like to learn more about this friendship concept, and perhaps discuss mutual defense treaties." Not every contact went smoothly. The Zephrani Empire, convinced of their superiority, attempted to capture a human diplomatic vessel. They learned, as others had before them, that human ships were never as vulnerable as they appeared. The battle was short, decisive, and ended with the Zephrani fleet admiral broadcasting an apology while his flagship vented atmosphere through 17 hull breaches. But the most significant moment came when humanity encountered the Galactic Council, an ancient body that governed trade and disputes between the galaxy's oldest civilizations. They'd watched humanity's rise with growing concern. "You spread too fast," the council chairman, a being of pure energy named Luminous Thought, declared. "You interfere in the natural order. Species must find their own way, not be protected by self-appointed guardians." Jake Marshall, now Admiral Marshall, stood before the assembly. His hair was gray, his face lined with years, but his presence filled the chamber. Beside him stood Tommy, wearing the insignia of Earth's first fleet commander. "With respect," Jake began, "the natural order you speak of is the strong preying on the weak. That might work for you, safe in your ancient power. But we've been the weak, we've been the hunted, and we decided to change the rules." "You cannot change the fundamental nature of the galaxy," another council member intoned. "Watch us," Tommy said, stepping forward. "In 15 years, we've gone from a single world to a recognized power. We've made allies of former enemies. We've protected dozens of species from extinction. Not because we had to, because we chose to. And what gives you the right to make that choice for others?" It was a young voice that answered. Tommy's daughter, Lisa, barely 18 and already wearing cadet insignia. She'd insisted on coming, the third generation of marshals to face the galaxy's threats. "What gives you the right not to?" Lisa challenged. "You have the power to help, but choose not to. You watch civilizations burn because it's not your problem. Well, humans make everything our problem. That's our strength," the council murmured among themselves. This was unprecedented, a species barely into spaceflight challenging the galaxy's oldest institution. Luminous Thought pulsed with different colors, their equivalent of deep consideration. "And if we forbid your interference? If the council declares humanity a rogue element to be contained?" Jake smiled, that same dangerous expression that had haunted alien nightmares for over a decade. "Then you'd have to enforce it. And enforcement means sending ships to Earth. I wouldn't recommend that." "You threaten the council?" "No," Tommy interjected. "We offer an alternative. Accept humanity as we are. Protectors, defenders, the galaxy's stubborn refusal to accept that might makes right. Work with us help others, or stay in your towers and watch as we change the galaxy without you." The debate raged for days. Some council members called for immediate military action. Others, wiser or perhaps more cautious, pointed out that humanity had defeated every force sent against them. In the end, it was the testimony of species humanity had protected that swayed the vote. The Kalari, saved from slavery. The Mokari, whose home world had been defended against raiders, a dozen others, all speaking of humans who'd risked everything to protect strangers. Not for gain, not for conquest, simply because it was right. The Council's final vote was close, but decisive. Humanity would be recognized as a legitimate galactic power. Their protection of other species, while unorthodox, would be permitted. Some said it was pragmatism. Better to have humanity as allies than enemies. Others whispered it was fear. Jake Marshall knew it was neither. It was understanding. The galaxy was slowly learning what Earth's children had always known. That strength wasn't about domination. It was about what you chose to protect. The ceremony recognizing Earth's status was broadcast across the galaxy. Jake stood with his son and granddaughter as the Council formally acknowledged humanity's place among the stars. But the real moment came after, when a small delegation approached them. It was led by Krelmar, the Zarathi survivor from the first encounter. His scales had never fully returned to their normal color, permanently marked by his encounter with humanity. But he didn't come in fear. "Admiral Marshall," he said, offering what passed for a bow among his people. "I've spent years studying your species, trying to understand. I think I finally do." "Oh," Jake kept his voice neutral, hand instinctively near his weapon. "You're not conquerors. You're not even really warriors. You're sheepdogs." Krelmar's reptilian features attempted a smile. "You protect the flock, even from wolves like us, my people? We would like to discuss joining your flock." Tommy and Lisa exchanged surprised glances, but Jake only nodded. "We'll listen, but understand. Joining humanity's pack means accepting our rules. No slavery, no preying on the weak, protection for all who need it. Terms we're prepared to accept. We've seen what happens to those who threaten what humans protect. We'd rather be under your shield than facing your guns." As the delegation departed, Lisa turned to her grandfather. "Think more will come? Former enemies wanting to join us?" "Probably," Jake said. "Fear's a powerful motivator. But maybe, over time, they'll learn it's not about fear. It's about family." He looked out at the stars visible through the station's viewport. Somewhere among them, human ships patrolled, protected, and stood ready. The galaxy had learned that humanity was dangerous. Now it was learning something more important, that humanity's danger was directed only at those who threatened the innocent. "What now?" Tommy asked. Jake smiled, thinking of Sarah waiting back on Earth, of all the families whose children could now explore the stars safely. "Now we do what humans have always done. We adapt, we grow, we protect our pack, and we make sure the galaxy never forgets. Mess with one human, you mess with us all." The stars beckoned, full of wonders and dangers. But humanity was ready. They'd faced the worst the galaxy could throw at them and emerged stronger. They'd turned enemies into allies, fear into respect, and isolation into community. Earth was no longer alone. It was the center of something new, a pack that spanned the stars, bound not by species or biology, but by a simple principle: protect those who cannot protect themselves. The age of human expansion hadn't begun with conquest. It had begun with a father protecting his son, and it would continue the same way. One protected life, one defended world, one offered hand at a time. The galaxy had learned to fear humanity. Now it would learn something far more powerful. It would learn to trust them.